Hello guys, this is your friend Multiverse Shinobi 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto was raised by Dante and Virgil? The son of Sparta, full story. Part 1. Chapter 1. The Night of Silver Lightning. The Hidden Leaf Village was alive with the sound of celebration. Paper lanterns glowed like amber embers against the twilight sky, and the air carried the sweet, smoky scent of street food. It was October 10th, the anniversary of the Kyuubi's defeat and the day the fourth Hokage gave his life for peace. But for Naruto Uzumaki, it was simply the night the world became a hunt. There, the demon is trying to hide in the shadows. A roar went up from a crowd of villagers at the end of the main thoroughfare. Naruto, barely 5 years old, didn't wait to hear the rest. He turned and bolted, his small lungs burning as he inhaled the cold night air. His sandals slapped against the cobblestone in a frantic, uneven rhythm. He didn't know why they hated him. He didn't know why his birthday was a day of mourning for everyone else. He only knew the weight of the stones they threw and the coldness in their eyes. "Get back here, you brat!" a Chunin yelled, leaping over a vegetable stall. A kunai whistled through the air, grazing Naruto's shoulder. The boy cried out, stumbling into a narrow, lightless alley. He scrambled over crates and trash, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He reached the end of the alley, only to find a towering brick wall. A dead end. Naruto spun around, his back against the freezing brick. The mob moved in, their faces distorted by the flickering torchlight. There were nearly 20 of them, merchants, laborers, and even a few shinobi whose headbands gleamed mockingly in the dark. "Please," Naruto sobbed, clutching his wounded shoulder. "I didn't do anything. Why are you doing this?" "You exist," a man spat, stepping forward with a heavy wooden club. "That's reason enough. Tonight, we finish what the fourth started." As the club was raised, the atmosphere in the alley suddenly changed. The ambient noise of the festival, the flutes, the laughter, seemed to vanish, replaced by a low, rhythmic thrumming that vibrated in the very marrow of Naruto's bones. The temperature plummeted. A frost began to creep up the brick walls. In the depths of Naruto's consciousness, a voice resonated. It wasn't the guttural, chaotic snarl of the nine-tailed fox. It was a voice of absolute authority, cold as a winter morning and sharp as a razor's edge. "Claim your birthright, child of the abyss. The blood of Sparta does not kneel to the weak. I won't let you kill me." Naruto screamed. A blinding discharge of silver and blue lightning erupted from Naruto's body. The concussive force hit the mob like a physical wall, throwing men backward into the street. Naruto's right arm began to spasm violently. Before his very eyes, the skin darkened, hardening into obsidian scales that shimmered with an ethereal blue light. His blonde hair bled out, turning into a stark, ghostly white, and the whisker marks on his cheeks faded as his skin became as pale as porcelain. The villagers groaned, trying to stand, but they froze. A figure was standing at the entrance of the alley. A man in a regal, midnight blue trench coat stood silhouetted against the moon. He didn't seem to be breathing. In his left hand, he held a long, curved katana with a white-hilted grip. "Pitiful," the man said. His voice was a calm, deadly whisper. One of the Chunin, fueled by idiocy and adrenaline, lunged at the stranger. "Who the hell are you? Stay out of." The man didn't seem to move. There was a faint click, the sound of a sword hilt hitting a scabbard. A split second later, the shinobi was sent flying into a brick wall, his chest sliced open by a force he couldn't even see. The man ignored the screaming crowd and walked toward Naruto. He stopped a few feet away, his icy blue eyes scanning the boy's transformed arm, the devil bringer. "You have the eyes of my father," the man stated, his expression unreadable. "And a spark of the true power." Naruto looked up, trembling, his blue eyes now glowing with a faint silver light. Who are you?" "I am Virgil," the man replied, extending a gloved hand. "And you are far more than a vessel for a common beast. This village is a cage for a wolf like you. Come, power awaits." Naruto looked at the hand, then at the villagers who were now scrambling away in terror. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a victim. He reached out and took Virgil's hand. Chapter 2. The Red Hunter and the Forgotten Twin. While the silence of the grave settled over the alleyway where Virgil stood, the western gate of Konoha was experiencing a much louder brand of chaos. Hey, get back here, you white-haired brat. That's my lucky coin. A boy no older than Naruto, with messy white hair and a defiant scowl, skittered across a rooftop. This was Nero. In his hand, he gripped a silver coin he'd swiped from a traveler, but his eyes were fixed on the man pursuing him. The man was a flash of crimson against the night. He moved with a lazy, predatory grace, leaping over obstacles as if gravity were merely a suggestion. He wore a long red duster and carried a massive blade on his back that looked far too heavy for any mortal to wield. Come on, kid, give it back and maybe I'll buy you a strawberry sundae. Dante shouted, a wide, cocky grin plastered on his face. Nero skidded to a halt at the edge of a roof, looking down into a dark courtyard. I don't know who you are, red coat, but in this village, you either eat or get eaten. And I'm tired of being hungry. Nero's right arm was wrapped in thick, scorched bandages, hiding a secret that had pulsed painfully beneath his skin since birth. As his anger flared, the bandages began to smolder, a faint red light leaking through the cracks in the cloth. Dante landed softly on the clay tiles a few feet away, his hands resting on his hips. He stopped joking, his sharp eyes narrowing as he looked at the boy's glowing arm. Well, what do you know? The intel was right. You've got the itch, too, don't you? Shut up. Nero lunged, swinging a desperate punch. Dante didn't even draw a weapon. He simply tilted his head, letting the small fist whistle past his ear. With a movement too fast for the human eye to track, he caught Nero's wrist. The moment their skin made contact, even through the bandages, a spark of raw demonic energy surged between them. Nero gasped, his knees buckling. What are you? I'm your favorite uncle, kid, Dante chuckled, though his eyes remained serious. And you're a long way from home. There's a whole world out there where people won't call you a freak for having a glowing hand. A world with pizza, loud music, and demons that actually put up a fight. Nero looked at the man, seeing a reflection of the power he had always felt dormant inside himself. Pizza, is that a type of jutsu? Dante's jaw dropped. He looked genuinely heartbroken. No pizza, man. This village is more depressing than the underworld. That settles it. You're coming with me. Consider this a hostile takeover by the Devil May Cry agency. Dante tapped a specific pressure point on Nero's neck, and the boy slumped into his arms, unconscious. Dante sighed, slinging the kid over his shoulder like a sack of flour. Now, where did Virgil get to? If he found the other one first, I'm never gonna hear the end of it. An hour later, under the shroud of a massive oak tree on the village outskirts, the two brothers met. Virgil stood perfectly still, the pale Naruto at his side looking like a small, ghostly soldier. Naruto's blue eyes widened as he saw the man in red approaching with a boy who looked remarkably like him. You're late, Dante, Virgil said, his voice cold and rhythmic. Traffic was a killer. Plus, this one is a biter, Dante complained, adjusting Nero on his shoulder. He looked at Naruto and whistled. Whoa, look at the kid. White hair, glowing arm, he's a chip off the old block, isn't he? Makes the blonde look like a bad dye job. Naruto looked at Nero, then back at the two men. Is he, like me? Virgil looked toward the horizon, where the stars seemed to bleed into a different reality. He is your kin. Both of you carry the blood of Sparta, the dark knight who stood against the heavens and hells alike. Virgil drew Yamato. With a single, vertical strike, he sliced through the fabric of space itself. A jagged rift of blue energy tore open, revealing a glimpse of a world filled with towering spires and neon lights. Wait. Naruto looked back at the lights of Konoha one last time. He thought of the cold glares, the empty stomach, and the loneliness. Then, he looked at his new family. I'm coming back one day. And when I do, I'm gonna be so strong that nobody will ever call me a demon again. HMPH, Virgil allowed a ghost of a smirk to touch his lips. Let us see if your will matches your words. The four of them stepped into the rift. As the blue light faded and the tear in reality sealed itself, the village of Konoha lost its greatest protector, and gained its most dangerous future. Chapter 3. Steel, Sweat, and Style. 5 years had passed since the night the sky tore open over Konoha. In a secluded fortress hidden within the jagged peaks of the Mallet Island, the silence of the morning was shattered by the rhythmic clashing of steel and the roar of a combustion engine. Focus, Naruto. A demon won't wait for you to find your balance. Virgil's voice was like a whip, cracking through the thin mountain air. Naruto, now 10 years old, skidded across the stone training grounds. His transformation was complete, his white hair was styled in a sharp, swept-back look, and his devil bringer arm hummed with a constant, suppressed azure glow. He held a heavy training katana, his breathing shallow but controlled. Across from him, Nero was revving the handle of a mechanical sword prototype. Talk is cheap, Virgil Sensei. Watch this. Nero lunged, his speed bolstered by a burst of red demonic energy, but Virgil simply tilted his head, and the blade whistled harmlessly past. Style, kids, you're missing the flair, Dante shouted from the balcony, leaning back in a chair with a slice of pizza in one hand and his silver handgun, ivory, in the other. If you don't look good while winning, did you even win? Shut up, Dante. Both boys yelled in unison. The training was brutal. Virgil pushed them to the brink of exhaustion, forcing them to master the art of the blade and the discipline of the mind. Dante, on the other hand, taught them the fun parts, the acrobatic gunplay, the reckless bravado, and how to harness their inner devil trigger. One evening, after a particularly grueling session that left Naruto with a bruised rib and Nero with a blackened eye, Virgil led them into the heart of the fortress, the armory of Sparta. You have mastered the basics of the bloodline, Virgil said, his eyes reflecting the candlelight. Now, you require tools that can withstand the weight of your souls. He presented two ornate, heavy crates. Nero opened his first. Inside lay the Red Queen, a massive, customized broadsword equipped with a motorcycle-like throttle that sprayed flammable propellant across the blade. Beside it was Blue Rose, a unique, double-barreled revolver capable of firing 2 shots at once. Oh, now we're talking. Nero grinned, revving the Red Queen. The sword roared to life, glowing cherry red. Naruto stepped toward his crate. Resting on blue velvet was a blade that felt alive the moment he touched the hilt. It was a sleek, heavy longsword he named Eclipse, designed to channel the raw power of his devil bringer. Along with it were twin magnums, one silver and one black, etched with the names Judgment and Mercy. These weapons are not just steel, Dante warned, stepping down from the shadows. They are part of you. They will grow as you grow. And believe me, the world outside these mountains is crawling with things that want to taste that steel. Naruto gripped Eclipse, feeling the resonance of Sparta's blood in his veins. He looked at Nero, who was already practicing a stylish spin with his new guns. 5 years, Naruto whispered. I'm not that scared kid in the alleyway anymore. Good, Virgil replied, his hand resting on Yamato. Because tomorrow, your training ends. Tomorrow, we go on our first hunt. There is a town near the border reporting a vanguard demon. It's time to see if you're worth the name you carry. Naruto looked at his reflection in the polished blade of Eclipse. He was ready. Chapter 4. The Vanguard and the Maiden of Gunpowder. The border town of Fortuna was a graveyard. A thick, unnatural fog clung to the cobblestones, and the only sound was the rhythmic creak of a rusted sign swaying in the wind. This was the hunting ground of a greater demon, a Hell Vanguard. Keep your eyes peeled, Nero. Don't let the fog play tricks on you, Naruto whispered, his hand tight on the grip of Eclipse. I've got it, Naruto. Just worry about your own hide, Nero retorted, though his eyes were darting nervously. His Red Queen was slung over his shoulder, the cold air making the engine blade let out a soft, metallic hiss. Suddenly, A high-pitched whistle cut through the air. Boom! A massive explosion rocked a nearby clock tower, sending debris raining down. Out of the smoke stepped a girl who looked no older than 15. She wore a white shirt, black shorts, and a look of pure, unadulterated boredom. Most notably, she was lugging a rocket launcher that was nearly as tall as she was. Hey, watch where you're aiming that thing! Nero yelled, shaking dust from his hair. The girl turned, her mismatched eyes, one red, one blue, narrowing as she looked at the two white-haired boys. Civilians. No, you smell like them. Get out of here, kids. This is a hunter's job. Hunter. Naruto stepped forward, a cocky grin spreading across his face. We are the hunters, and you're getting in the way of our target. Before she could reply, the ground began to tremble. From the shadows of the ruined tower, a towering figure emerged. It was draped in tattered black robes, carrying a massive, curved scythe that pulsed with purple energy. The Hell Vanguard. Target sighted, the girl said, her voice turning cold. She leveled her bazooka, Kulina Ann, and pulled the trigger. The rocket screamed across the square, but the Vanguard moved with terrifying fluidity, vanishing into a cloud of smoke and reappearing behind her. Lady, move, Naruto shouted. He didn't wait for her to react. In a blur of speed, Naruto used his Devil Bringer arm to grapple a nearby lamppost, swinging himself into the air. He unsheathed Eclipse, the blade glowing with azure energy as he brought it down on the demon's side. Clang! The impact sent a shockwave through the square. The Vanguard let out a hollow, raspy laugh, its glowing eyes fixed on Naruto. The blood of the traitor, it smells so sweet. Sweet. I'll show you sweet. Nero roared, revving the throttle of Red Queen. The blade ignited in a burst of orange flame as he lunged, his strikes a chaotic, powerful whirlwind of fire and steel. The battle was a symphony of violence. Naruto provided the precision, his twin magnums judgment and mercy barking in a steady rhythm, while Nero provided the brute force. The girl, who they now knew as Lady, danced between them, providing heavy fire support with grenades and bayonet strikes. The Vanguard was fast, but it couldn't handle the combined pressure of three distinct styles. In a final, desperate move, Naruto channeled every ounce of his demonic energy into his left arm. The Devil Bringer expanded, glowing with a blinding light. Jackpot! Naruto yelled, slamming his demonic fist into the Vanguard's chest, shattering its armor and sending its soul back to the abyss. As the fog began to lift, Lady wiped a smudge of oil from her cheek and looked at the two boys with newfound respect. Not bad for a couple of runts. Where did you learn to fight like that? Our family taught us, Naruto said, sheathing Eclipse. He looked at Lady, his heart fluttering in a way that had nothing to do with combat. I'm Naruto, and we're just getting started. Well, Naruto, Lady smirked, slinging her bazooka over her shoulder. Try not to get killed. The real demons are much uglier than that one. Chapter 5. The Prodigal Son Returns. The gates of Konoha stood tall and imposing, yet to Naruto, they looked smaller than he remembered. 5 years of training in the rugged mountains and fighting the spawn of the underworld had changed his perspective. He wasn't the shivering child who had crawled through the mud to escape a mob, he was a son of Sparta. Place looks the same. Still smells like burnt wood and stagnation, Dante remarked, tilting his head back to look at the carved faces of the Hokages. Hey Virgil, you think they have better pizza now? Focus, Dante, Virgil replied, his hand resting habitually on the hilt of Yamato. We are here for the scrolls Sarutobi promised, and to finalize the boy's status. Try not to burn the village down before lunch. Naruto and Nero walked between their mentors. Naruto wore a sleek, high-collared black trench coat with deep red lining, his white hair caught in the wind. At his hip sat Eclipse, and his Devil Bringer arm was hidden beneath a specially reinforced sling. Nero, meanwhile, looked bored, his hand resting on the throttle of Red Queen. The Chunin guards at the gate, Azumo and Katetsu, stepped forward to intercept them. State your business, wait. Naruto. Katetsu's jaw dropped. He looked at the white-haired youth, searching for the blonde whiskers and the orange jumpsuit. It can't be. Out of the way, Naruto said. His voice was no longer a high-pitched whine, it was a calm, melodic baritone that carried a dangerous edge. The guards didn't move fast enough. Naruto didn't even reach for a weapon. He simply walked forward, and a faint pulse of his demonic aura pushed the air outward, forcing the guards to step back involuntarily. Walk light, boys, Dante smirked as they passed through. As they walked through the streets, the village fell silent. People stopped in their tracks. They saw the white hair, the regal coats, and the heavy weapons. Whispers broke out like a wildfire. Is that the Uzumaki brat? He looks like a monster. Who are those men with him? They look like gods of death. Naruto ignored them. His blue eyes remained fixed on the Hokage tower. He felt no hatred, only a cold, distant indifference. They were sheep, and he was no longer their victim. The Hokage's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi was buried in paperwork when the door to his office was blown off its hinges. Not by an explosion, but by a sheer surge of gravity. Sarutobi Jiji, Naruto said, stepping into the room. The old Hokage stood up, his pipe nearly falling from his mouth. He looked at the young man before him. The transformation was total. The boy's chakra felt different. It was no longer just the chaotic heat of the Nine Tails, it was something ancient, cold, and immensely dense. Naruto, is it truly you? Hiruzen breathed. The blood of Sparta has awakened. Virgil stepped forward, his presence filling the room and making the Anbu hiding in the shadows tremble. As we agreed 5 years ago, the boy has returned. He and Nero will enter the ranks of your shinobi, but on our terms. 5 years, Hiruzen sighed, sitting back down. You look like your father, Naruto. Minato would have been, well, he would have been surprised. I don't care about the past, Jiji, Naruto said, leaning against the Hokage's desk with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. I'm here to become a ninja, but I won't be joining the academy. I'm too far ahead for that. Nero and I want the graduation exam. Now. Hiruzen looked at Dante, who was busy trying to balance a kunai on his nose, and then at Virgil, who looked ready to cleave the building in half if the answer was no. The exam is in 3 days, Hiruzen said. If you pass, you will be assigned a Jonin sensei. But be warned, Naruto, the village has not forgotten the fox. Naruto's devil bringer arm glowed a fierce, mocking blue under his sling. Let them remember the fox. Soon, they'll have something much more terrifying to worry about. Chapter 6. The Graduation and the Smell of Gunpowder. The Konoha Academy was buzzing with excitement. For the students, today was the culmination of years of training in kunai throwing, history, and basic ninjutsu. For Naruto and Nero, it was a mere formality, a tedious hurdle before they could get back to real hunting. As the duo walked down the hallway, the chatter stopped. Students leaned out of doorways to stare at the 2 white-haired boys. Who are they? Look at those coats, a pink-haired girl, Sakura Haruno, whispered to her friend. They look dangerous, Ino Yamanaka replied, her eyes lingering on Naruto's sharp features. In the corner, Sasuke Uchiha narrowed his eyes. He felt a strange, cold pressure emanating from the boy with the blue-lined coat. It wasn't chakra. It was something heavier, something that made his own Uchiha blood feel sluggish. Uruka Yumino, the instructor, stood at the front of the classroom, looking nervous. He had been briefed by the Hokage, but nothing prepared him for the sight of the boy he once knew as a loud, orange-clad prankster. Naruto Uzumaki, and Nero, Uruka called out, his voice trembling slightly. Just get on with it, teach, Nero said, leaning against the back wall. He wasn't wearing a headband yet, but his blue rose revolver was tucked visibly into his belt. The practical exam. The students moved to the training field. The exam consisted of 3 parts: target practice, sparring, and the clone jutsu. For target practice, Sasuke Uchiha went first, hitting every bullseye with clinical precision. The class cheered. Then it was Naruto's turn. He didn't pick up a kunai. Instead, he drew judgment from his holster. Bang, bang, bang. In less than a second, 6 bullets had passed through the center of 6 targets, shattering the wooden posts behind them. The sound was like thunder. The students screamed, and Iruka nearly fell over. That's not a ninja tool. Iruka stammered. It's a tool that works, Naruto said, twirling the silver magnum and holstering it with a click. Next came the clone jutsu. Sasuke performed a perfect bunshin, creating 2 illusions. When Naruto stepped up, he closed his eyes. He didn't use the hand seals for the clone jutsu. Instead, he tapped into the Sparta bloodline. The air behind him shimmered, and a translucent, blue glowing spectral figure appeared. It looked like a demonic knight, holding a phantom version of Eclipse. A projection. Iruka gasped. It has physical mass. The spectral figure swung its blade, cleaving a practice dummy in half before vanishing. The silence that followed was absolute. The sparring match. Uchiha vs. Sparta. Final match, Iruka announced, swallowing hard. Sasuke Uchiha vs. Naruto Uzumaki. Sasuke stepped into the ring, his face a mask of cold fury. I don't know where you've been, Naruto, but you're still just a loser. That flashy arm and those toys won't help you against an Uchiha. Naruto didn't even draw his sword. He kept his devil bringer arm in its sling and tucked his other hand into his pocket. Show me what an Uchiha is worth then. Sasuke lunged, his speed impressive for a genin. He unleashed a flurry of punches and kicks, but Naruto moved like a ghost. He used the trickster style Dante had beaten into him, teleporting short distances in a blur of blue light. Sasuke, frustrated, channeled chakra into his hand. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. A massive sphere of flame roared toward Naruto. The crowd gasped. Naruto didn't move until the flames were inches away. He simply swung his free hand, a pulse of raw demonic energy shattering the fireball as if it were glass. Before Sasuke could react, Naruto was in his personal space. He grabbed Sasuke by the front of his shirt and lifted him off the ground with one hand. You're chasing shadows, Sasuke, Naruto whispered, his blue eyes glowing with a faint, predatory silver. But I have the darkness itself on my side. He dropped the Uchiha, who collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Iruka cleared his throat, his hands shaking as he held 2 forehead protectors. Naruto, Nero, you both pass. Welcome to the ranks of the Hidden Leaf. Naruto took the headband and tied it loosely around his neck. Nero tied his around his arm. As they walked away, the Rookie 9 watched them, realizing that the hierarchy of the village had just been irrevocably broken. Chapter 7. Team 0, The Devil's Hand. The morning air in the academy classroom was thick with tension. The newly graduated genin sat in rows, waiting for their names to be called. Sasuke Uchiha sat in the back, his jaw tight and eyes fixed on the desk. Every time he looked at Naruto, his skin crawled. The memory of that overwhelming pressure from the sparring match still haunted him. Naruto and Nero sat apart from the rest, leaning back with an air of casual indifference. Naruto was busy cleaning the barrel of mercy, while Nero was fiddling with the throttle of Red Queen, the soft vroom vroom of the engine making Sakura and Ino jump every few seconds. Iruka entered the room, a clipboard in hand. He looked at Naruto and Nero with a complicated expression, part fear, part pride. All right, settle down. I will now announce the team placements, Iruka shouted. He went through the usual list. Team 8, Team 10. Then he reached the big one. Team 7. Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha. He paused, looking at his notes with confusion. And sigh. A pale boy with a fake smile stood up, but the classroom erupted. What? Sakura yelled. Where's Naruto? Everyone knows teams are 3 people. Due to the unique skill sets of certain individuals, Iruka said, looking directly at Naruto, the Hokage has authorized a special tactical unit. Team 0. This team will operate under the direct command of the Hokage and a specialized Jonin. Naruto stood up, holstering his gun. And who's the lucky Jonin? Before Iruka could answer, the window of the classroom shattered. A woman with short black hair and a massive bazooka on her back vaulted inside, landing perfectly on a desk. Behind her, a silver-haired man with a mask covering half his face dropped from the ceiling. "Lady," Naruto blurted out, a rare grin breaking across his face. "Hey, kid," Lady said, smirking as she patted Kalina Ann. "The old man in the tower hired me as a special consultant. Apparently, you two are too much for the local ninjas to handle." "I am Kakashi Hatake," the masked man said, his one visible eye crinkling in a closed-eye smile. "I'll be the official Leaf representative for Team Zero. Our mission profile is a bit different from the others. We don't do cat-finding missions." Finally, Nero grunted, standing up and slamming his fist into his palm. Some real action. The rooftop meeting. An hour later, the four of them stood on the roof of the academy. The wind whipped through Naruto's black duster. "All right," Kakashi said, leaning against the railing. "Let's do introductions. Likes, dislikes, dreams for the future." Nero went first. "My name is Nero. I like revving my sword and being left alone. I dislike arrogant pricks who think their eyes make them special. My dream, to find out exactly how much power this arm can really unleash." Lady shifted her bazooka. "You know me. I like gunpowder, big explosions, and getting paid. I dislike demons and men who talk too much. My dream is to make sure every monster that crawls out of the dark stays dead." Kakashi nodded. "And you, Naruto?" Naruto looked out over the village. He could see the spot where the mob had cornered him 5 years ago. He could feel the pulse of the devil bringer under his sling, humming in tune with the demonic blood in his veins. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Sparta," he said, his voice echoing with a slight, unnatural resonance. "I like my family, training until my bones ache, and the sound of a perfect shot. I dislike the weakness of this village and the way it treats what it doesn't understand." He looked Kakashi dead in the eye. "My dream isn't to be Hokage anymore. That's too small. I'm going to become the gatekeeper. I'll be the one who stands between this world and the hells that want to swallow it. And anyone who tries to stop me, well, they can meet Eclipse." Kakashi felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't a boy. This was a young man who had been raised by the two most dangerous beings he had ever met. "Well," Kakashi said, his voice regaining its casual tone. "The Hokage has a special entry mission for us. There have been reports of strange disappearances near the Land of Waves. Not ninjas, but something that leaves a trail of sulfur." Naruto's eyes glowed a faint, icy blue. "Sulfur. Sounds like our kind of party." "Jackpot," Nero added, a vicious smirk on his face. Chapter 8. The Land of Salt and Sulfur. The journey to the Land of Waves was silent, save for the occasional click of Naruto checking the cylinders of judgment and mercy. Kakashi watched his new students with a wary eye. Usually, genin were jittery on their first mission, but Naruto and Nero moved with a cold, professional stillness that reminded him more of Anbu Black Ops than 12-year-old boys. "Something's wrong," Lady said suddenly, stopping at the edge of a thick fog bank near the coast. She sniffed the air, her nose wrinkling in disgust. "That's not just sea salt. I smell sulfur and burnt ozone. The mist is usually thick here, but this is different," Kakashi noted, his hand moving to his headband. Suddenly, 2 puddles on the ground rippled. 2 figures surged out, the demon brothers, rogue ninja from the mist. They moved toward Naruto and Nero with jagged chain claws, intending to shred the easy targets first. "Target practice," Nero muttered. He didn't even draw his sword. As the chains wrapped around him, Nero caught the metal links with his bare right hand. With a guttural roar, he yanked the chains, pulling both Chunin toward him. Midair, he delivered a devastating kick to the first brother's chest, the sound of ribs snapping echoing through the trees. The second brother tried to retreat, but Naruto was already behind him. Eclipse remained sheathed, but Naruto used the hilt to strike the man's temple with surgical precision. "Too slow," Naruto whispered. Kakashi watched, stunned. The fight had lasted exactly 4 seconds. You didn't even use chakra. Why waste it on small fry? Nero shrugged, revving the handle of Red Queen just to hear the engine growl. The Bridge of Despair. When the team finally reached the home of the bridge builder, Tizuna, the atmosphere was oppressive. The village was starving, but the fear in the people's eyes wasn't directed at Gato's thugs. They were terrified of the monsters in the woods. Gato hired more than just ninjas. Tizuna trembled as they sat in his dim kitchen. He brought in these things. They don't eat food, they eat shadows. My people are disappearing. Demons, Lady spat, slamming a fresh magazine into Kalina Ann. Gato must have found a fragment of a hell gate or a summoner. He's playing with fire. Then we'll be the ones to put it out, Naruto said, his eyes glowing a faint, menacing silver. The next morning on the bridge, the fog rolled in thicker than ever. But it wasn't white, it was a sickly, bruised purple. From the mist emerged Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist, carrying his massive executioner's blade. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a dozen scarecrows, demons made of stitched burlap and rusted blades, their bodies twitching in a horrific, rhythmic dance. Zabuza, Kakashi said, revealing his Sharingan. I see you've found some new friends. I don't care about these creatures, Kakashi, Zabuza growled, though he looked visibly unsettled by the twitching demons behind him. Gato paid me to kill the bridge builder. If these things help clear the way, so be it. They aren't helping you, you idiot. Naruto stepped forward, his black coat fluttering. He drew a clips, the heavy blade hummed with azure energy. They're just waiting for you to die so they can eat your soul too. Big talk for a brat. Zabuza lunged. Nero, lady, take the burlap bags. Naruto commanded, his voice taking on that dual-toned, demonic resonance. The big guy with the oversized kitchen knife is mine. Naruto met Zabuza's massive blade with eclipse. The clash of steel sent sparks flying into the purple mist. Unlike a normal ninja, Naruto didn't trade blows, he used his devil bringer to catch the back of Zabuza's blade, forcing the legendary swordsman into a deadlock. What kind of strength is this? Zabuza gasped, his muscles bulging as he tried to overpower a boy half his size. The kind you can't learn from a scroll, Naruto retorted. He pulled his silver magnum, Judgment, and pressed the cold barrel against Zabuza's stomach. Jackpot. Bang. The shot didn't kill Zabuza. The swordsman managed to twist at the last second, but the concussive force of the demonic bullet sent him crashing into the bridge railing. Meanwhile, Nero was in his element. He was a whirlwind of fire and steel, his Red Queen glowing cherry red as he cleaved through the scarecrows. Is that all you got? I've fought tougher mops than you. Lady provided a steady beat of explosions, her grenades scattering the demon swarm. But as the battle raged, a terrifying roar echoed from the water below. Something much larger was rising, a lesser Cerberus, its three heads snapping at the bridge supports. Gato stood on a distant boat, laughing hysterically. Kill them all. I don't need ninjas if I have the hounds of hell. Gato screamed. Naruto looked at the three-headed beast, then at his trembling team leader. Kakashi-sensei, stay with Tizuna. Nero, lady, let's show them how the Sparta family handles a dog. Chapter 9. The Three-Headed Dog and the Fox's Fire. The bridge groaned under the weight of the lesser Cerberus. The creature was a nightmare of frost and shadow, its three heads snapping with bone-chilling cold. Each time it breathed, the wooden planks of the bridge became brittle, shattering like glass. A Cerberus. Out here, Nero spat, wiping black demon blood from his cheek. Gato must have stumbled upon a serious rift to pull this thing through. It's hungry, Lady noted, reloading Kalina Ann with a specialized armor-piercing round. And it's not looking for kibble. Zabuza, wounded and leaning on his sword, watched in disbelief. He was a cold-blooded killer, but this was beyond the realm of ninjutsu. Kakashi, what kind of monsters are you traveling with? The kind that handle the things we can't, Kakashi replied, his Sharingan tracking the beast's movements. Naruto. Nero. Coordination. Naruto didn't answer. He was staring at the Cerberus, his blue eyes turning a deep, predatory violet. Inside his mind, the cage was rattling. The Kyuubi was restless, its red chakra leaking into the cool, blue streams of his Sparta heritage. The dog thinks it is the alpha, the fox growled, its voice a tectonic rumble. Show it who owns the darkness, boy. Nero, go left. Lady, keep the middle head busy. Naruto commanded. Naruto lunged forward, his devil bringer arm glowing so brightly it bled through his sling. He jumped, using a spectral platform of light to propel himself toward the Cerberus's right head. The beast snapped at him, its fangs dripping with icy venom. Naruto met the attack head-on, catching the beast's massive jaw with his demonic hand. The bridge buckled under the pressure. Nero, now. Nero revved Red Queen to its maximum, exceed, level. The engine screamed as he plummeted from above, his blade a streak of roaring orange fire. Down, boy. He slammed the ignited blade into the center head, the explosion of heat and demonic steel forcing the beast to its knees. But the Cerberus was resilient. It let out a sonic howl that blasted Nero and Lady backward, sending them skidding across the frozen bridge. The beast's eyes turned blood red, and a surge of unnatural ice began to encase Naruto's legs, pinning him to the spot. Naruto! Kakashi shouted, starting forward, but the remaining scarecrow demons blocked his path. Naruto felt the cold creeping up his waist. He looked at the Cerberus, which was now lunging for his throat. He reached deep, past the cold discipline of Virgil, past the stylish flair of Dante, to the raw, burning hatred stored in his gut. You want to eat. Naruto's voice dropped an octave, becoming a terrifying blend of human, demon, and beast. Then eat this. A pillar of crimson and azure energy erupted from Naruto. The ice shattered instantly. His white hair stood on end, tinged with a bloody orange hue. His pupils slit into fox-like diamonds, and a spectral cloak of red chakra manifested over his blue duster, forming two flickering tails of energy. This was his feral devil trigger. Naruto moved in a flash of red lightning. He didn't use a sword. He used his devil bringer, now wreathed in the Kyuubi's burning chakra. He punched the Cerberus's left head so hard the sound of the impact echoed across the entire ocean. Crack. The head slumped, lifeless. Naruto didn't stop. He vanished and reappeared on the beast's back, his hands glowing with a mixture of blue demonic light and red fox fire. He grabbed the remaining two heads by the necks, his strength now amplified to a level that defied logic. This is my bridge, Naruto growled, the chakra tails lashing out and pinning the beast's limbs. And you're just a stray. With a guttural roar, Naruto channeled the combined energy into a single point. A massive explosion of violet light consumed the Cerberus, vaporizing the beast and sending a shockwave that cleared the fog for miles. As the light faded, Naruto stood in the center of the bridge, the red chakra retreating and his white hair falling back into place. He gasped for air, his body smoking from the sheer heat of the transformation. Gato, watching from his boat, turned pale. No. That's impossible. My monsters. Lady walked up behind Naruto, patting him on the shoulder. Nice show, kid. A bit messy, but I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Nero walked over, shaking his head. Tails, huh, you're always such a show-off. Naruto looked at his hands, which were still trembling slightly. He looked back at Kakashi and Zabuza. The demon of the mist looked genuinely afraid. The mission is over, Zabuza, Naruto said, his voice returning to normal. Go home. Before I decide I'm still hungry. Zabuza didn't argue. He picked up his sword and vanished into the retreating mist. The bridge was saved, but the world had just seen a glimpse of the weapon Konoha had spent 5 years perfecting. Chapter 10. The Serpent's Tongue and the Golden Invitations. The journey back to Konoha was different. The villagers of the Land of Waves had cheered them, calling Naruto the bridge builder's saint, but Naruto had only felt the lingering heat of the fox's chakra beneath his skin. As the gates of the leaf came into view, Kakashi looked at his students. Lady was cleaning a smudge of demon ichor off her bazooka, Nero was trying to see how fast he could rev Red Queen without it exploding, and Naruto. Naruto was staring at the Hokage rock with a gaze that felt 1,000 years old. Take the rest of the day off, Kakashi said, his voice unusually soft. The Hokage will want a full report tomorrow. And Naruto, try to keep the tales to a minimum inside the walls. Naruto offered a half smirk. No promises, Scarecrow. The shadow in the trees. While Naruto walked toward the Sparta estate, the massive, Gothic manor Dante and Virgil had acquired, on the outskirts of town, he felt it. A cold, slimy sensation against his senses. It wasn't the raw, honest aggression of a demon. It was something slicker. Something human that had forgotten how to be human. You can come out, Snake Man, Naruto said, stopping in a deserted training grove. The smell of formaldehyde is giving me a headache. From the trunk of a nearby oak, the bark seemed to melt. A tall, pale figure emerged, eyes like golden slits and a tongue that flickered with unnatural hunger. Orochimaru, the Sannin of the mist, looked at Naruto with a terrifying curiosity. So, the rumors were true, Orochimaru hissed, his voice like sandpaper on silk. The Uzumaki brat has traded his whiskers for the silver of a demon. Such a fascinating evolution. Naruto didn't draw his sword. He didn't have to. He let a small pulse of his Sparta aura leak out, a crushing, blue pressure that made the grass around him wither. I don't know who you are, but you're trespassing on my time. Walk away before I make you into a belt. Orochimaru chuckled, a wet, rattling sound. So much spirit. I wonder, does the Sparta blood taste better than the Uchihas? I came for the boy with the Sharingan, but you are a masterpiece of biology and hellfire. Before the Sannin could move, a blue blur cleaved the air between them. Yamato stayed sheathed, but the shockwave of the draw motion sent a gale of wind that nearly knocked Orochimaru off his feet. Virgil stood there, his back to Naruto, his presence making the Sannin's chakra feel like a flickering candle. You are bold to touch what belongs to me, worm, Virgil said, his voice a freezing void. Orochimaru's eyes widened. He knew power when he saw it, and the man in the blue coat was a predator of a level he had never encountered. My apologies. I was merely admiring the progress. With a flick of his tongue, Orochimaru vanished into the earth. Low life, Virgil spat, looking at Naruto. You let him get too close. Your senses are dull from that bridge mission. He was just a scout, Virgil Neeson, Naruto replied, though his hand was tight on Eclipse. Next time, I won't wait for him to talk. The invitation. The next morning, Team Zero gathered at the Hokage's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked older than usual, his desk covered in scrolls with foreign seals. You did well in the land of waves, the Hokage began, puffing on his pipe. But the world has taken notice. The hidden sand, the hidden cloud, they are all sending their best. The Chunin exams begin in 2 weeks. He handed 3 golden scrolls to Naruto, Nero, and a newly arrived lady, who was technically there, special genin, for the roster. The Sannin, Orochimaru, is moving in the shadows, Hiruzen continued, his eyes meeting Naruto's. He wants power. He wants vessels. This exam will be a war in all but name. Naruto took the scroll and crushed it in his hand, the paper turning to ash as a spark of blue lightning flickered between his fingers. He looked at Nero, who was already grinning with a manic energy. Chunin, Jonin, Sannin, it doesn't matter, Naruto said, his white hair shadowing his eyes. Let them all come. We've been training with the 2 strongest devils in existence. He turned toward the door, his duster snapping in the wind. It's time to show this village that the demon brat didn't just survive. He conquered. Chapter 11. Sand, Blood, and the Devil's Grin. The atmosphere in Konoha had shifted from festive to predatory. Shinobi from across the great nations lined the streets, their protectors gleaming with the symbols of the sand, the stone, and the rain. But even among the elite genin of the world, a path cleared whenever the members of Team Zero walked by. Naruto leaned against a fence near the training grounds, watching a group of sand genin harass Konohamaru and his friends. He didn't care much for the squabble until he felt it, a vibration in the air that felt like dry, grinding stone and cold, suffocating blood. Mother is hungry, She wants your blood, a raspy, hollow voice whispered. Naruto looked up. Standing upside down on a nearby tree branch was a boy with auburn hair and dark circles around his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept in years. A massive gourd was strapped to his back, and the sand swirling around him felt heavy with the scent of 1,000 deaths. Gaara of the desert. Hey, sand boy, Nero said, stepping up beside Naruto and revving the Red Queen just enough to send a plume of exhaust into the air. You're getting sand in my boots. Knock it off. Gaara's head tilted at an unnatural angle. His gaze drifted from the trembling Konohamaru to Naruto. For the first time in Gaara's life, his sand didn't just react, it recoiled. It pulled back toward the gourd as if sensing a predator it couldn't consume. You. Gaara hissed, dropping to the ground with a thud. You are like me. No. You are worse. The thing inside you, it isn't screaming. It is laughing. The thing inside me knows its place, Naruto said, pushing off the fence. He didn't draw a weapon, but he allowed his devil bringer to pulse once, a shockwave of azure light that cracked the pavement beneath Gaara's feet. And right now, it's telling me you're a walking headache. I will kill you, Gaara whispered, the sand around him rising in a tidal wave. I will justify my existence by bathing in your silver blood. Try it, Naruto challenged, his eyes turning that icy, piercing silver. And I'll make sure that gourd of yours is the only thing left to bury. Enough. A voice barked. Temari and Kankuro jumped in front of Gaara, their faces pale. They had seen Gaara kill dozens, but they had never seen him hesitate. Looking at Naruto and Nero, they realized why. These weren't ninjas, they were anomalies. Gaara, we have a meeting with the proctor. Don't waste your strength here, Temari pleaded, her hand shaking on her giant fan. Gaara stared at Naruto for a long moment before the sand retreated into his gourd. Naruto Uzumaki, I will taste your soul in the forest. As the sand siblings retreated, Nero spat on the ground. Creepy kid. He smells like a damp tomb. He's a Jinchuriki, Nero, Naruto said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. But he's broken. He lets the beast lead. That's why he's weak. The first exam. The War of Intelligence. The first stage of the Chunin exams was a written test, led by the interrogation specialist Ibiki Morino. The room was filled with over 100 genin, all sweating under the pressure of the impossible questions. Naruto sat at his desk, staring at the paper. He didn't need to cheat using jutsu. He tapped into the Sparta bloodline's heightened perception. By focusing his demonic energy into his eyes, the world slowed down. He could see the scratch of every pencil in the room, the heartbeat of the proctors, and even the minute vibrations of the air. Beside him, Nero wasn't even pretending to work. He was leaning back, balancing his chair on two legs. Hey, teach, Nero called out, interrupting the silence. This test is boring. Can we get to the part where we break stuff? Ibiki slammed his hand on the desk, his scarred face twisting. Sit down and shut up, or your whole team is disqualified. Naruto chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to echo from the shadows of the room. He picked up his pen and, with blinding speed, filled out the entire back of the paper. He didn't answer the questions with math or history, he answered them with the philosophy of power he had learned from Virgil. When the 10th question was finally revealed, the ultimate test of will, Naruto didn't hesitate. While others trembled at the thought of being a genin forever, Naruto stood up. Will, you want to talk about will? Naruto asked, his presence expanding until the air in the room felt twice as heavy. I spent 5 years in a hell you can't imagine just to earn the right to stand here. A failing grade from a man in a trench coat doesn't scare me. We're staying. Nero grinned, slamming his fist onto the table. Yeah, what he said. Bring on the next round. Ibiki stared at the two boys. He had seen thousands of candidates, but these two, they didn't have the fear of failure. They had the arrogance of those who had already conquered death. You pass, Ibiki said, a rare smirk crossing his face. All of you, now get out of here before I change my mind. As Team Zero walked out of the hall, Naruto caught a glimpse of Lady waiting by the exit, her bazooka polished and ready. The Forest of Death is next, Lady said, tossing a coin. Ready to play in the dirt. Naruto gripped the hilt of Eclipse. The forest is where predators go to eat. And I'm starving. Chapter 12. The Forest of Shadows and Snakes. The Forest of Death was a sprawling hellscape of giant carnivorous plants, poisonous mists, and beasts that had long ago evolved past the need for sunlight. To a normal genin, it was a nightmare. To Naruto, it looked like a playground. Gate 12 is open. Get moving. The proctor, Anko Mitarashi, screamed with a sadistic grin. Team Zero, Naruto, Nero, and Lady, shot into the foliage like a volley of silver arrows. They didn't move like ninjas, they moved like a hunting pack. We need a heaven scroll, Lady noted, her boots crunching over a giant centipede. And we have a earth scroll. Who are we hitting? Doesn't matter, Nero replied, his hand on the throttle of Red Queen. Whoever shows up first gets the honor of being a hood ornament. They hadn't been in the forest for 10 minutes when the air suddenly grew heavy. The birds stopped singing. The ambient hum of insects died into a terrifying silence. A thick, sickly yellow wind began to swirl around them, carrying the scent of old skin and chemical rot. He's here, Naruto said, his voice dropping into a low growl. He drew Eclipse, the blue blade humming in anticipation. From the shadows of a massive redwood, a woman with a grass ninja headband emerged. Her body flickered and stretched unnaturally until she shed her skin like a garment, revealing the pale, serpentine form of Orochimaru. Such marvelous intuition, the Sannin hissed, his long tongue flickering. I've been watching you, Naruto-kun. The way you handle that peculiar energy. It makes my skin crawl with delight. You again, Nero spat, revving his sword. Didn't Virgil Neeson give you enough of a scare? Your brother isn't here to save you now, little devil, Orochimaru replied. He performed a series of rapid hand signs. Summoning jutsu. A giant python, the size of a small building, erupted from the earth, its scales crashing through trees as it lunged for the trio. Lady, take the snake. Nero, cover her. Naruto commanded. The pedophile is mine. The predator versus the devil. Naruto vanished. He didn't use a body flicker. He used the air trick, reappearing directly in front of Orochimaru's face. He swung Eclipse in a vertical arc, but Orochimaru's neck elongated, his head darting to the side like a cobra. Speed is not enough. Orochimaru laughed, his hands forming the signs for a wind-style jutsu. Great breakthrough. A hurricane-force wind slammed into Naruto, but the boy didn't fly back. He dug his devil bringer arm into the ground, anchoring himself as the wind tore the coat off his shoulders. My turn, Naruto growled. He didn't draw a gun. He channeled the Kyuubi's burning chakra into his demonic arm, the blue scales turning a violent, glowing violet. He lunged, his fist connecting with Orochimaru's chest. The impact didn't just break bone, it sent a shockwave of demonic energy through the Sannin's chakra network. Orochimaru coughed up blood, his eyes wide with shock. This is not just the fox. What is this foul power? It's called a family tradition, Naruto retorted. Orochimaru snarled, his face contorting. He opened his mouth, and a sword, the Kusanagi, slowly emerged from his throat. I was going to give you a gift, Naruto, a curse mark to bind you to me. But I think I'll just take your body by force. The Sannin moved with a speed that blurred the lines of reality, the Kusanagi clashing against Eclipse. Each strike sent ripples of dark energy through the forest. Orochimaru was a master of 1,000 jutsu, but he was fighting something that didn't play by the rules of ninjutsu. Naruto was a brawler with the soul of a knight and the fury of a beast. Meanwhile, Nero had jumped onto the giant python's head. Hey, ugly, catch. He jammed the muzzle of Blue Rose into the snake's eye and pulled the trigger. Boom. The double-barreled blast sent the snake into a frenzied thrash, only for Lady to finish it off with a well-placed rocket from Kalina Ann. Naruto. Finish it, Nero yelled, sliding down the snake's dying carcass. Naruto locked blades with Orochimaru. Their faces were inches apart. You want a vessel? Naruto asked, his voice echoing with the roar of 1,000 demons. Then try to contain this. Naruto unleashed his feral devil trigger. The red chakra tails erupted, but this time, a spectral armor of blue energy formed over them. He grabbed Orochimaru's Kusanagi blade with his bare devil bringer hand, the metal shrieking as he began to crush it. Impossible. Orochimaru gasped. The Kusanagi cannot be. Everything breaks, Naruto growled. With a roar, Naruto headbutted the Sannin, the force shattering Orochimaru's porcelain skin mask. Before the Sannin could recover, Naruto unleashed a million stab combo, his blade a blur of silver light that turned Orochimaru's body into a pincer's cushion of holes. Orochimaru dissolved into a pile of snakes, his head emerging from a different pile 20 feet away. He was panting, his regeneration struggling to keep up with the demonic rot Naruto's blade left behind. You are a monster beyond my reach, for now, Orochimaru hissed, his body trembling. But the Uchiha still lingers. We shall meet again, son of Sparta. The Sannin vanished into the ground, leaving behind a scorched earth scroll and a forest that was suddenly, terrifyingly quiet. Naruto stood in the clearing, his transformation fading. He looked at the scroll, then at his hands. He felt hungry, not for food, but for the thrill of the hunt. Well, Nero said, walking up and kicking a dead snake. That was a hell of a warm-up. Let's get to the tower. I'm craving some ramen. Naruto sheathed a clips with a sharp click. Yeah, let's go. We have a test to finish. Chapter 13. Preliminaries and the Alpha's Fall. The central tower of the Forest of Death stood like a monolith amidst the carnage. While other teams arrived battered, bloodied, and trembling, Team Zero walked through the doors as if they were returning from a casual stroll. Naruto tossed the two scrolls onto the table before the stunned Chunin proctors. Heaven and earth. We're done, Naruto said, his voice flat. Soon, the other qualifying teams trickled in, Team 7, the Sand Siblings, and the rest of the Rookie 9. The air in the arena was thick with the smell of ozone and medicine. The third Hokage stood on the balcony, his eyes lingering on Naruto's white hair. He could still see the faint scorched marks on Naruto's duster from the encounter with Orochimaru. Due to the number of survivors, we will hold preliminary matches, the proctor, Hayate Gecko, coughed into his hand. The screen will decide your fate. The electronic board word, names spinning in a blur before clicking into place. Naruto Uzumaki Sparta vs. Kiba Inuzuka. Alright, my lucky day, Kiba barked, jumping over the railing with Akamaru on his head. I've been waiting to show you up, Naruto. I don't care about your new look or those fancy toys. A ninja is about instinct. Naruto hopped down, landing silently. He didn't draw a clips. He didn't even take his hand out of his pocket. Instinct? Naruto asked, a mocking glint in his eyes. A dog has instinct. A wolf has hunger. Do you know what a devil has, Kiba? Shut up, Akamaru. Let's go. Man-beast clone. In a cloud of smoke, Akamaru transformed into a feral twin of Kiba. They began to spin, creating a dual drilling vortex of wind and claws. Fang over fang. The attack tore up the concrete floor, heading straight for Naruto. The crowd held their breath. Even Kakashi leaned forward, curious to see how Naruto would handle a physical assault without his weapons. Naruto didn't dodge. He stood his ground, his devil bringer arm pulsing beneath the blue fabric of his sleeve. As the twin drills reached him, Naruto reached out with his left hand. Crunch. The arena went silent. Naruto had caught both Kiba and Akamaru by their faces, one in each palm, stopping their momentum instantly. The sheer force of the stop created a shockwave that cracked the windows of the observation deck. The answer is, well, Naruto finished, his voice echoing with a low-frequency vibration. Kiba struggled, his muffled yells suppressed by Naruto's grip. Akamaru whimpered, his primal instincts screaming at him that he wasn't looking at a human, but at an apex predator from a realm beyond his comprehension. You play at being a beast, Kiba, Naruto said, lifting both of them off the ground effortlessly. But you've never seen a real one. Naruto let a fraction of his demonic aura leak, not the fox's fire, but the cold, oppressive weight of Sparta. Kiba's eyes widened, his pupils shrinking in pure, instinctive terror. Naruto then spun, hurling both the boy and the dog across the arena. They slammed into the stone wall with a sickening thud, falling unconscious before they hit the floor. Winner. Naruto Uzumaki Sparta, Hayate announced, sounding more like he was reciting a eulogy than a victory. Naruto walked back toward the stairs, passing a stunned Sakura and a brooding Sasuke. He stopped next to Neji Hyuga, whose Byakugan was flared to its limit. Your eyes are looking for my chakra, aren't they, Hyuga? Naruto whispered as he passed. Keep looking. You might find something staring back. Up on the balcony, Dante leaned over the rail, grinning at Virgil. Hey, look at that. The kid's got the one-handed toss down. I think he's been watching my old tapes. He was inefficient, Virgil replied, though his eyes remained fixed on Naruto with a cold sense of approval. He should have ended it in 3 seconds, not 10. He's playing with his food. As the board began to spin again, Nero stepped forward, revving the Red Queen. My turn. Hope I get someone who actually bleeds. The screen flickered and stopped. Nero vs. Masumi Tsurugi. Nero jumped into the ring, a predatory smirk on his face. Jackpot. Chapter 14. The engines roar in the final brackets. Nero stood in the center of the arena, his posture slouching and full of arrogance. Across from him stood Masumi Tsurugi, a ninja from the hidden sound who looked more like a contortionist than a warrior. You think those toys make you special, brat? Masumi hissed, his limbs beginning to undulate like rubber. I can wrap around you and crush every bone in your body before you even pull that trigger. A lot of people talk big until I start the engine, Nero replied, his hand gripping the throttle hilt of the Red Queen. Begin. Hayate Gecko coughed. Masumi lunged, his arms extending like snakes, coiling around Nero's torso and limbs in a suffocating grip. The crowd gasped as the sound ninja tightened his hold. See, you're finished. I'll snap your neck like a dry twig. Nero didn't panic. He didn't even try to struggle. He simply grinned. Hey, you hear that? It's the sound of your funeral. Nero's right hand, hidden beneath his sleeve, clenched. He reached back and grabbed his own sword's handle. Vroom, vroom, vroom. He twisted the throttle 3 times. The blade of the Red Queen began to glow a violent, hissing orange as the internal combustion engine pushed it to the exceed limit. Exceed. Level 3. Nero roared. A massive burst of flame and steam erupted from the sword's exhaust ports. The heat was so intense that Masumi's rubbery skin began to blister instantly. With a guttural shout, Nero flexed his muscles, using his demonic strength to tear through Masumi's unbreakable grip. As Masumi fell back, Nero didn't give him a second to breathe. He swung the Red Queen in a horizontal arc, the blade leaving a trail of fire in the air. Boom! The explosion from the blade's impact sent Masumi flying across the room, his clothes charred and his body limp. Before he could hit the wall, Nero appeared above him, his spectral devil bringer arm manifesting for a split second to slam the ninja back into the floor. Winner. Nero, Hayate announced, clearing the smoke with a wave of his hand. Nero sheathed his sword with a satisfying metallic clink. Too easy. I didn't even get to use the gun. The final selection. After a few more matches, including Lee's legendary bout with Gaara and Hinata's struggle against Neji, the remaining finalists were gathered. The third Hokage looked down at the survivors: Naruto, Nero, Sasuke, Gaara, Neji, Shikamaru, Shino, Temari, and Kankuro. The final matches will take place in 1 month, Hiruzen stated. This time is for you to train, to refine your skills, and to prepare for the eyes of the world. The daimyo and leaders from every land will be watching. As the finalists dispersed, Naruto felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Kakashi. The Hokage wants a word with you and Nero, the masked man said, his tone unusually grave. And I suspect your mentors will want to be there too. Back in the Hokage's office, Dante was sitting on the windowsill, tossing a silver coin, while Virgil stood in the corner like a statue made of ice. Naruto, Nero, Hiruzen began, you have shown power that goes beyond our understanding. But Orochimaru is still in play, and the sand is hiding something. This month isn't just for training, it's for preparation for a war. We know, Naruto said, looking at Virgil. The boy needs to master the devil trigger without the fox's interference, Virgil stated coldly. He relies too much on the beast's rage. If he is to be a true son of Sparta, he must lead with his own soul. And Nero needs to work on his blue rose shots, Dante added with a wink. Kid's missing the bullseye by an inch. Totally unstylish. Naruto looked at his hand, the blue scales of the devil bringer glowing faintly. He looked at Nero, then at the older brothers who had saved them. 1 month, Naruto whispered. In 1 month, the leaf will see what happens when the devil truly wakes up. Chapter 15. The Cage in the Court of the Dark Knight. The training grounds of the Sparta estate were silent, save for the hum of the barrier Virgil had erected. Naruto sat cross-legged in the center of a stone circle, his eyes closed. Across from him, Virgil stood with his arms crossed, his presence a stabilizing anchor in the physical world. Enter your mindscape, Naruto, Virgil commanded. The fox and the devil are fighting for the same throne. If you do not mediate the conflict, your body will be the first casualty. Naruto breathed out, and his consciousness plunged into the darkness. He opened his eyes to find himself in a familiar sewer, the water cold around his ankles. But the scenery was shifting. The pipes were turning into Gothic arches, and the red haze of the Kyuubi was being cut by streaks of cold, blue lightning. He walked toward the massive cage. Behind the bars, the Kyuubi loomed, its 9 tails lashing like whips of fire. But there was something else. Standing in front of the cage was a spectral figure, a towering knight in silver armor, holding a blade that radiated a terrifying, ancient calm. The brat returns, the Kyuubi growled, its red eyes narrowed. And he brings the scent of that dead knight with him. Why do you hold back, Naruto? My chakra could turn this village to ash in seconds. Because I'm not a tool for your tantrums anymore, Naruto said, his voice steady. He looked at the spectral knight, the remnant of Sparta's will stored in his blood. And I'm not a puppet for a legacy I don't fully understand. The spectral knight raised its sword. The air in the mindscape crystallized into shards of ice. It was a test. The blood of Sparta was demanding proof of worth, while the fox was demanding a surrender to rage. Then die in your indecision. The Kyuubi roared, lunging against the bars and flooding the chamber with corrosive red chakra. Naruto didn't run. He drew the mental image of eclipse. Nero told me once that power isn't about who you kill, it's about what you protect. I'm protecting the person I've become. He slammed his devil bringer into the water. A surge of azure energy collided with the red tide. The two forces didn't cancel each other out, they began to spiral. Naruto focused every ounce of his will, acting as the bridge between the demonic blood and the Biju's fire. In the real world, Naruto's body began to float. His white hair flickered between silver and a violent crimson. He's doing it, Dante whispered from the sidelines, leaning against a tree while Nero watched with wide eyes. He's mixing the cocktails. Hope he doesn't blow the roof off the place. Inside the mindscape, the spectral knight lowered its blade and bowed. The Kyuubi recoiled, surprised as Naruto's blue energy began to weave through the red chakra, taming the jagged edges of the fox's hate into a sharp, focused weapon. This is my soul, Naruto declared, his voice echoing with a new, terrifying authority. And in this house, I make the rules. When Naruto opened his eyes in the physical world, the stone circle beneath him had been pulverized into dust. His blue eyes now had a subtle, golden ring around the pupil, the mark of a devil who had tamed a god. Virgil stepped forward, a rare, thin smile touching his lips. You have achieved balance. The sin devil trigger is still beyond you, but for the exams, you have become something the hidden leaf is not prepared to witness. Naruto stood up, his movements fluid and predatory. He felt lighter, faster, and infinitely more dangerous. 2 weeks left, Naruto said, looking toward the village. Nero, how's the blue rose coming along? Nero pulled his revolver and fired a shot into a falling leaf, splitting it perfectly down the center before the leaf even hit the ground. It's coming along just fine. I think I'm ready to show that sand freak what a real, ultimate defense looks like. The month of training was coming to an end. The stage was set. The devil was no longer at the door, he was already inside. Chapter 16. Fate in the Shadow of the Sparta. The atmosphere in the stadium was electric. The air hummed with the collective anxiety of thousands. High in the VIP booth, the third Hokage sat beside the cage, unaware that the man behind the sand-veiled mask was a snake in disguise. Let the final matches of the Chunin selection exam begin. The proctor, Genma Shiranui, announced, a Senbon clicking against his teeth. The first match was a clash of philosophies. Naruto Uzumaki Sparta vs. Neji Hyuga. Neji stood in the center of the ring, his white eyes flared, the veins around his temples bulging as he activated his Byakugan. He looked at Naruto and frowned. Usually, he could see the chakra circulatory system as a map of blue lines. But Naruto was different. His chakra was intertwined with a dense, swirling darkness that felt like looking into a black hole. You can change your hair and your clothes, Naruto, Neji said, his voice cold and arrogant. But fate is unchangeable. You were born a failure, a vessel for a monster. That is your cage. Naruto stood 10 feet away, his black duster swaying in the breeze. He didn't even draw eclipse. He simply looked at Neji with eyes that had seen the depths of his own soul. Fate? Naruto asked, a small, dangerous smirk playing on his lips. I've spent the last month staring into the eyes of a literal god of death and a king of hell. If fate wanted me in a cage, it should have picked a stronger lock. Arrogant. Gentle fist. 8 trigrams 64 palms. Neji moved with frightening speed, closing the distance in a heartbeat. His hands became a blur, striking at Naruto's tenketsu with surgical precision. To the crowd, it looked like Naruto was being overwhelmed. But up in the stands, Virgil watched with his arms crossed. Inefficient, he muttered. Naruto wasn't being hit. He was using the royal guard style Dante had teased him with. Every time Neji's fingers were about to make contact, Naruto moved just a fraction of an inch, absorbing the kinetic energy into his palm. Why don't you strike back? Neji roared, frustrated by his inability to land a decisive blow. Because I wanted to see the absolute defense everyone keeps talking about, Naruto replied. Naruto suddenly snapped his fingers. The energy he had absorbed from Neji's strikes exploded outward in a shockwave of pure force. Neji was sent skidding back, his feet carving grooves into the stone floor. My turn, Naruto said. He didn't use a jutsu. He tapped into his devil bringer. Blue spectral arms manifested around him, not just one, but 4, each mimicking the movements of his own limbs. You talk about cages, Neji, Naruto said, his voice deepening as he stepped forward. But look at your own eyes. You're so busy looking at the truth that you've blinded yourself to reality. Naruto lunged. He was a blur of blue and black. Neji desperately spun into his rotation, a dome of chakra forming around him to repel the attack. It was the Hyuga's pride, the ultimate defense. Naruto didn't stop. He clenched his demonic fist, wreathed it in a thin layer of the Kyuubi's red chakra, and punched the dome. Craack. The stadium went silent. The unbreakable rotation shattered like glass. Naruto's fist stopped an inch from Neji's face, the wind from the punch blowing the Hyuga's hair back. Fate didn't break that dome, Neji, Naruto whispered, his blue eyes turning a piercing, demonic silver. I did. Neji fell to his knees, his Byakugan deactivating as his chakra collapsed. He looked up at Naruto, not with hatred, but with a shattering sense of realization. The winner is Naruto Uzumaki Sparta. Genma yelled. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, but many sat in stunned silence. They had expected a brawl. They had witnessed a slaughter. Naruto turned and walked toward the stairs. He looked up at the balcony where Nero was waiting, revving the Red Queen in anticipation for his own match. Your turn, Nero, Naruto said as they passed each other. Try to leave some of the arena intact for the next guy. Nero grinned, his hand on his revolver Blue Rose. No promises, brother. No promises. Chapter 17. Sandstorm and Steel, the invasion begins. The stadium was a powder keg. The victory of Naruto over Neji had left the audience breathless, but the atmosphere turned from awe to pure, cold dread as Gaara of the desert walked into the arena. Sand leaked from his gourd like a physical manifestation of his bloodlust, hissing against the stone floor. Nero hopped over the railing, landing with a heavy thud. He didn't look impressed. He looked bored. Hey, Sandman, you've been staring at my brother all day. Mind focusing on the guy who's actually gonna kick your teeth in? Gaara didn't answer with words. His sand rose up in a massive, swirling pillar, forming the face of a screaming demon. Mother wants your head, she wants to see the silver blood. Genma, just start the damn match, Nero grunted, his hand gripping the throttle of the Red Queen. Begin. Gaara didn't move a muscle. A wave of sand roared toward Nero, faster and more dense than anything seen in the preliminaries. Nero didn't dodge, he revved his sword. Vroom vroom. The blade ignited, and Nero swung a vertical arc, the explosion of heat and fuel blasting a hole straight through the sand wave. Is that it? Nero taunted. He lunged, using a burst of demonic energy to propel himself like a rocket. Gaara's shield of sand rose automatically, a thick wall blocking Nero's path. But Nero wasn't aiming for a slash. He slammed his left hand, his human-looking hand, into the sand wall. For a split second, a spectral, blue devil bringer manifested over his arm, the giant clawed hand digging into the sand and tearing it apart like wet paper. Gotcha. Nero pulled Blue Rose and fired a double shot point blank. The bullets shattered Gaara's sand armor, drawing the first drop of blood the boy had ever shed in the arena. Gaara let out a scream that sounded more like a dying animal than a human. He retreated into a sphere of solid sand, his chakra spiking to terrifying levels. Something's wrong, Naruto whispered from the stands, his eyes narrowing as he felt a shift in the air. High in the VIP booth, a plume of purple smoke erupted. The cage stood up, grabbing the third Hokage and leaping onto the roof. At the same moment, feathers began to fall from the sky, a massive genjutsu putting the audience to sleep. The invasion, Kakashi shouted, drawing a kunai. Naruto, Nero, forget the match. Protect the civilians. Like hell, Nero yelled, dodging a blast of sand that had turned a sickly, monstrous tan. I'm finishing this fight. Inside the sand sphere, Gaara was transforming. A massive, clawed arm made of sand and blue markings erupted, followed by a head that resembled a demented tanuki. The Shukaku was waking up. Nero, back off, Naruto yelled, leaping from the stands and landing beside his brother. He drew a clips, the blade humming with a mixture of blue demonic energy and the Kyuubi's red fire. From the village walls, giant snakes were summoned, crashing through buildings. Sound and sand ninjas poured into the streets. The Konoha Crush had begun. Nero, take Lady and handle the snakes at the north gate. Naruto commanded, his voice echoing with the authority of the Sparta bloodline. I'll handle the overgrown sandcastle. Fine. But don't you dare finish him before I get back. Nero revved his sword and vaulted over the stadium wall, Lady right behind him, her bazooka Kalina An already raining fire on the invading sound ninja. Naruto turned back to Gaara, who was now half transformed into a mountain-sized beast. The Shukaku roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of the village. You want to play God, Gaara? Naruto asked, his white hair whipping in the wind. He unleashed his feral devil trigger, the two chakra tails lashing out behind him. Then let me show you what happens when a devil decides to go to church. Naruto lunged upward, his blade a streak of violet light against the darkening sky. The war for the hidden leaf had truly begun. Chapter 18. the roar of the Tanuki and the Devil's redemption. The stadium was no longer an arena, it was a crater. The Shukaku, the one-tailed sand spirit, had fully manifested, a towering mountain of cursed sand and blue sigils. It let out a high-pitched, manic laugh that shattered windows for blocks. Free. At last, I am free. The beast shrieked, its voice a grinding chorus of stone. Now, who shall I crush first? Naruto stood atop a jagged pillar of the ruined stadium wall, looking like a speck against the beast's massive form. His feral devil trigger was pulsing, the red and blue energies weaving together to form a shimmering, translucent armor. You're too loud, Naruto said, his voice amplified by his own demonic power. And your breath smells like a graveyard. The Shukaku's massive yellow eye fixed on Naruto. The fox's brat, and the scent of a devil. A delicious snack. The beast opened its mouth, condensing air and sand into a massive sphere of kinetic energy. Wind style. Air bullets. Naruto didn't dodge. He sheathed a clips and held out his devil bringer. As the massive air bullet screamed toward him, Naruto swung his demonic arm in a wide parry. The spectral blue claw expanded to the size of a house, batting the wind blast into the sky where it exploded like a supernova. The roof of the tower. Meanwhile, on the roof of the Hokage Tower, Orochimaru stood triumphant within a purple barrier, flanked by the resurrected first and second Hokages. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked weary, his soul prepared for the Reaper death seal. It is over, sensei, Orochimaru hissed. Konoha falls today. I wouldn't bet the house on that, Snake Charmer. A voice, casual and dripping with sarcasm, cut through the tension. From the shadows of the tiles, Dante emerged, leaning rebellion against his shoulder. Beside him, Virgil stood like a pillar of cold marble, Yamato already held in a loose, ready draw. Who are you? Orochimaru snarled, his eyes narrowing as he felt the sheer, oppressive gravity of their presence. We're the guys your mother warned you about, Dante chuckled, his red coat flapping in the wind. Well, if you had a mother. You look like you were grown in a jar of pickles. Virgil didn't speak. He simply stepped forward. The purple barrier, the four violet flames formation, that was supposed to be impenetrable, shattered into dust the moment his aura touched it. The sound four ninjas maintaining it collapsed, their lungs suddenly refusing to draw air. Dante, Virgil said, his voice a freezing wind. You take the resurrected kings. I want the snake. Ah, but I wanted the snake. He's got that whole Voldemort vibe going for him, Dante complained, but he was already moving. In a blur of red, Dante met the first Hokage's wood style with a barrage of gunfire and sword strikes that moved faster than the human eye could process. The roof became a theater of gods and devils. The desert's end. Back at the stadium, Naruto had reached the head of the Shukaku, where Gaara sat encased in sand, his eyes closed in a forced sleep. Wake up, Gaara, Naruto roared. He lunged, but the sand formed 1,000 spears to impale him. Naruto used his spectral wings, small, flickering shards of blue light, to dance through the air. He drew judgment and fired 3 shots, each bullet infused with the Kyuubi's fire. The explosions acted as a distraction, allowing Naruto to get within striking distance. He gripped Eclipse with both hands, the blade turning a blinding white. Stinger. Naruto propelled himself forward, a living missile of demonic energy. He pierced through the Shukaku's final layer of defense and slammed his forehead into Gaara's. Crack. The link was broken. Gaara's eyes snapped open, his pupils shrinking as the Shukaku's form began to crumble around them. The massive beast let out one final, frustrated scream before dissolving into a literal sandstorm that blanketed the stadium. As the sand settled, Naruto stood over the exhausted Gaara. He was panting, his transformation fading, leaving his white hair matted with dust. Why? Gaara whispered, looking up at the sky. Why are you so strong? We are the same, monsters hated by all. Naruto reached down, offering a hand to the boy who had tried to kill him. Because I found people who didn't care what I was. They cared about who I wanted to be. You're not a monster, Gaara. You're just lonely. And a son of Sparta doesn't leave family behind, even the broken ones. Gaara looked at Naruto's hand, then slowly reached out. High above, the sound of an explosion rocked the Hokage tower. Naruto looked up, seeing a flash of red and blue light. Looks like the old men are finishing up, Naruto smirked. Let's go, Gaara. We still have a village to save. Chapter 19. Shadows of the Red Cloud. The invasion was over, but Konoha bled. The funeral for the fallen was held under a gray, weeping sky. Naruto and Nero stood at the back of the crowd, their dark coats a stark contrast to the black kimonos of the mourners. They didn't cry. They had seen enough of death in the mountains to know that grief was a luxury for the living. The old man survived, Nero muttered, glancing at Hiruzen, who stood with his arm in a sling, his face heavily bandaged. Barely, Naruto replied. If Dante and Virgil hadn't stepped in, Orochimaru would have taken his head. The Sannin had escaped, but not without a price. Virgil had severed one of Orochimaru's arms with a spatial cut that even his regeneration couldn't fix. The threat was gone, but the village was vulnerable. The arrival of the predators. 2 days later, at the tea shop near the village entrance, 2 figures sat in the shadows. They wore straw hats and long black cloaks adorned with red clouds. The boy has changed, a calm, melodic voice said. It was Itachi Uchiha. His chakra, it's no longer just the 9 tails. There is a coldness to it. A void. Whatever he is, he's still just a brat. His partner, Kisame Hoshigaki, grinned, patting the hilt of his massive shark skin blade, Samahata. Let's grab him and go. I want to see if a devil tastes better than a ninja. They didn't make it 5 steps before the air around them froze. A blue-hilted katana blocked their path. Virgil stood there, his eyes cold and judging. You are trespassing. And you are far too loud. An Uchiha and a swordsman from the mist, Dante added, dropping down from a rooftop, leaning on rebellion. Sorry, boys. The kids booked for the weekend. No kidnappings allowed. Kisame swung Samahata, but Dante caught the massive blade with one hand. The impact cracked the ground, but Dante didn't flinch. Nice toothpick. Does it come in a men's size? The clash was brief but terrifying. The Akatsuki duo realized they weren't fighting humans. They were fighting forces of nature. We aren't here for a war, yet, Itachi said, activating his Mangekyo Sharingan. But as he looked into Virgil's eyes, he saw a reflection of a soul that had already conquered its own demons. The genjutsu shattered before it could even take hold. Withdraw, Kisame, Itachi commanded. We are not prepared for this. The new mission. That evening, Hiruzen summoned Team Zero. The Akatsuki are moving, the Hokage said. And the village needs a new leader. Someone who can heal our wounds and stand as a symbol. I want you to find my old student, Tsunade Senju. Naruto looked at his mentor, Virgil, who nodded. We'll find her, Naruto said, checking his magnums, judgment and mercy. But if those Red Cloud guys show up again, I'm not just going to let them walk away. Don't worry, kid, Dante laughed, ruffling Naruto's white hair. We'll make a road trip out of it. Pizza, gambling, and a legendary medic. What could go wrong? Chapter 20. The Sin and the Sharingan. The air in the narrow hotel hallway grew heavy, turning cold and static. Naruto stood at one end, his hands tucked into the pockets of his black duster. Across from him stood 2 of the world's most wanted criminals, Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki. So, you're the one, Naruto said, his blue eyes narrowing. His white hair cast a sharp shadow over his brow. The Uchiha who slaughtered his own blood. What brings a ghost like you to a place like this? We do not require your life, boy, Itachi said, his voice a calm, hollow melody. His Sharingan spun slowly in the dim light. We only require the fox within you. Come quietly, and the pain will be brief. Pain. Naruto let out a low, dark chuckle. He drew a clips from its sheath, the blade humming with azure electricity. You haven't even seen what real pain looks like. The Duel of Gods. Kisame swung his massive, shark skin blade, Samahata, with a hungry grin. Talk is cheap. Let's see if this silver-haired brat tastes as good as he looks. Kisame lunged, but Naruto didn't dodge. He caught the serrated edge of Samahata with his bare devil bringer hand. The sword's scales tried to shred Naruto's skin to drain his chakra, but the demonic limb remained unyielding, harder than diamond. I've got it. Kisame's eyes widened. Why isn't Samahata draining his energy? Because this isn't chakra. Fish face, Naruto growled. He delivered a brutal kick to Kisame's chest, the force of the impact sending the swordsman crashing through 3 layers of brick walls. In that instant, Itachi moved. His fingers blurred through signs. Tsukuyomi. The world turned red and black. Naruto found himself strapped to a cross in a void where time stood still. Itachi appeared everywhere, holding blades. In this realm, I control space and time. You will suffer here for years, even if only a second passes outside. But then, a jagged crack appeared in the crimson sky of the illusion. Don't ever make the mistake of entering my mind again, Naruto's voice boomed, echoing with a dual-toned resonance. The blood of Sparta doesn't take kindly to trespassers. A surge of raw demonic pressure exploded from within Naruto, shattering the genjutsu like a hammer through glass. Itachi recoiled, blood trickling from his left eye as his ultimate illusion was forcibly broken. The awakening. Sin Devil Trigger. Itachi, this kid is a freak, Kisame said, coughing as he climbed out of the rubble. We can't hold back. Naruto closed his eyes, taking a deep, rhythmic breath as Virgil had taught him. He felt the cold discipline of his Sparta blood and the searing rage of the Kyuubi finally clicking together like a well-oiled machine. You think you're the predators. Naruto's body began to erupt in a blinding aura of violet and indigo light. Meet the apex. Suddenly, Naruto's form shifted. His silhouette grew larger, and 2 massive wings made of solidified energy and fire burst from his back. A crown of demonic horns emerged from his forehead, and his eyes burned with the golden light of a true king of hell. This was a fragment of the Sin Devil Trigger. The entire town trembled under the weight of his presence. Naruto vanished, moving faster than the Sharingan could track. He appeared directly in front of Itachi, not with a sword, but with a clenched demonic fist. The shockwave of the punch sent both Itachi and Kisame soaring through the roof and into the clouds. Itachi steadied himself in midair, looking down at the transformed boy with a look of profound realization. Withdraw, Kisame. He is far beyond our current estimations. The two vanished into a swirl of crows and water, but not before Itachi cast one last look at Naruto, not of fear, but of grim respect. The arrival of the Sannin. As the dust settled and Naruto reverted to his human form, Dante and Nero came skidding into the clearing. With them was a woman holding a bottle of sake, a blue diamond mark shining on her forehead. Whoa, the kid literally raised the roof, Dante whistled, looking at the destroyed hotel. Looks like I missed the party. Shut up, Dante, the woman snapped, her eyes fixed on Naruto. She looked at the white hair and the heavy aura of power. So, this is him. Minato's son and the heir to a devil. I didn't believe the old man until now. Naruto sheathed a clips with a sharp click and looked at her. Tsunade-sama, I hope your medical jutsu is as good as they say. Because the world is about to get a lot bloodier. Chapter 21. The Bitter Taste of Inferiority. The return of Tsunade Senju was heralded by a mix of celebration and relief. With her medical expertise, the wounded were healed, and the village's morale skyrocketed. But amidst the cheers and the inauguration of the 5th Hokage, a cold storm was brewing in the Konoha General Hospital. Sasuke Uchiha sat on his bed, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. He had seen it. From the hospital window, he had witnessed the clash between Naruto and the Akatsuki. He had seen the boy he once called a loser command a power that made the legendary Itachi Uchiha retreat. Why? Sasuke whispered, his voice cracking. How can he be so far ahead? The door creaked open. Naruto stepped in, carrying a small box of takeout. His white hair was messy, and his blue duster was stained with dust. Hey, lady said you were awake. You look like hell. Sasuke. Sasuke didn't look up. Fight me, Naruto. Naruto paused, his expression flattening. You're not in any condition to fight, Sasuke. You've got chakra exhaustion and. I said fight me, Sasuke roared, lunging out of bed. His Sharingan spun wildly. I've spent my whole life training to kill Itachi. And you just show up with these toys and this demonic power and you make it look like a joke. The rooftop duel. They stood on the hospital roof, the sun setting behind them. Sasuke was breathing heavily, his Chidori chirping like 1,000 birds in his hand. Naruto stood 10 paces away, his hands in his pockets. He hadn't even drawn a weapon. Draw your sword, Naruto. Use that form. Sasuke screamed, his desperation manifesting as black sparks in his lightning. I don't need a sword to stop you, Sasuke, Naruto said calmly. And you don't want to see that form. It's not a gift, it's a burden. Sasuke charged. The Chidori screamed as he thrust it toward Naruto's chest. Naruto didn't move until the last second. He didn't use a jutsu, he simply activated the Devil Bringer for a split second, catching Sasuke's wrist in a grip that felt like a vice made of iron. The Chidori dissipated harmlessly against Naruto's palm. Is this all your revenge is worth? Naruto asked, his voice echoing with a touch of Virgil's coldness. Blind rage. If you want to kill Itachi, you don't need more hate. You need more discipline. Naruto shoved him back. Sasuke stumbled, looking at his trembling hand. In that moment, 4 figures appeared on the roof, the sound 4. The snake is calling, Uchiha, Kidomaru hissed from the shadows. The boy in white is a god. You're just a bird in a cage. Come with us, and we'll give you the power to break it. The departure. Naruto sensed them immediately. He went to draw judgment, but a hand caught his shoulder. It was Dante. Let him go, kid, Dante said, his usual humor replaced by a grim seriousness. Dante. They're taking him, Naruto shouted. He's not being taken. He's choosing, Virgil added, appearing from a swirl of blue petals. A man who seeks power at the cost of his soul is a man you cannot save until he realizes the weight of his chains. Naruto watched as Sasuke looked back one last time, not at the village, but at Naruto. There was no friendship left in those eyes, only a hollow, burning envy. Sasuke vanished into the night with the sound 4. Naruto gripped the hilt of a clips until his hand bled. The air around him began to crackle with a mixture of blue and red energy. He's my teammate, Naruto growled. I'm going after him. We know, Dante smirked, tossing Naruto a new pair of tactical gloves. And we're not stopping you. But this isn't a ninja mission anymore. This is a hunt. Nero stepped up beside Naruto, revving the Red Queen until the engine screamed. The recovery team is ready. Let's go bring that idiot back before I have to beat some sense into him. Chapter 22. The Waterfall of Destiny. The Sound 4 were dead, scattered across the forest by the combined might of the Konoha Genin and the Sand siblings. But the primary target was gone. Naruto stood at the edge of the great waterfall, the statues of Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju looming over him like ancient titans. Sasuke stood on the opposite side, his skin turned a sickly gray, his hair long and wild. The curse mark had spread across his body like a virus, and 2 grotesque, hand-like wings had sprouted from his back. You followed me all this way, Naruto. Sasuke's voice was distorted, layered with a dark, unnatural resonance. To what end? To tell me about bonds, again. Naruto's white hair was soaked by the rain, clinging to his face. He didn't look angry, he looked disappointed. Bonds? No, I'm here because I made a promise to a girl who cries for you. And because I won't let a son of Sparta's rival be a puppet for a snake. I am no one's puppet. Sasuke roared, his purple chakra flaring. He formed the hand signs for the Chidori, but the lightning was no longer blue, it was a dark, flickering onyx. This is the power of my hate. Lamenting Chidori. The clash of bloodlines. Naruto didn't hesitate. He didn't use a half measure. If you want to see a monster, Sasuke, I'll show you a god. Devil trigger. Naruto was engulfed in a pillar of azure light. When it faded, his duster had merged into a sleek, armored skin. His eyes glowed a lethal gold, and a spectral tail of pure energy lashed behind him. He drew a clips, the blade glowing with such intensity that the rain vaporized before it could touch the steel. They collided in the center of the lake. The impact was so great that the water was pushed back, revealing the muddy floor of the valley. Sasuke flew through the air, his wings allowing him to maneuver with predatory grace. He rained down fireballs, but Naruto simply batted them away with his devil bringer as if they were bothersome insects. Is this the power Orochimaru gave you? Naruto asked, his voice a terrifying, dual-toned growl. A cheap imitation of a demon. Pathetic. Naruto vanished using Trickster, reappearing above Sasuke. He slammed his fist into the Uchiha's chest, sending him plummeting into the water. Sasuke coughed up blood, his Sharingan struggling to track Naruto's movements. I won't lose to you. Sasuke screamed. He focused everything into one final strike. He began to spin, his dark Chidori expanding until it looked like a black sun. The final strike. Naruto landed on the water, sheathing his sword. He didn't need it for this. He raised his right hand, the devil bringer glowing with the combined essence of the Sparta blood and the Kyuubi's red chakra. Judgment. Burst. As Sasuke lunged with his black lightning, Naruto met him with a concentrated sphere of violet energy. The two powers clashed at the center of the valley. For a moment, there was a deafening silence. Then, the world turned white. The explosion carved a crater into the earth and shattered the statues' heads. When the smoke cleared, Naruto was standing over Sasuke. The Uchiha's wings were broken, and the curse mark had receded. He was unconscious, his body battered and broken. Naruto's transformation faded, leaving him exhausted, blood dripping from his knuckles. Naruto looked up at the sky. The rain had stopped. A lone figure stood atop the ruined statue of Madara. It was Virgil. You didn't kill him, Virgil noted, his eyes scanning the carnage. He's still my friend, Virgil Neeson, Naruto whispered, falling to his knees. But he's not coming back. Not today. Then let him go, Virgil said, his voice unusually soft. He has chosen his path. Now, you must choose yours. The Akatsuki are still out there. And they won't be as merciful as you. Naruto gripped the wet earth. I'll be ready. Next time, I won't just be a devil. I'll be the one who hunts them down. Chapter 23. The Master of Two Worlds, the finale. 3 years had passed since the battle at the Valley of the End. The world had changed. The Akatsuki had begun their harvest of the Biju, and the nations trembled. But in the high peaks of the mountains, far beyond the reach of any ninja village, a transformation had been completed. The gates of Konoha creaked open. A tall figure stepped through the dust. He wore a long, deep blue duster over a black tactical vest. His hair was a stark, brilliant white, and on his back sat the massive, jagged blade of Eclipse, humming with a sentient hunger. The air here hasn't changed, Naruto said, his voice deep and resonant. Beside him stood Nero, his mechanical arm, now a masterpiece of Dante's design called the Devil Breaker, glistening in the sun. Less talk, Naruto. The village is under fire. They looked up. The sky over Konoha was occupied by 6 figures in red clouded cloaks. The leader, a man with orange hair and eyes like rippling water, the Rinnegan, floated above the Hokage rock. This world shall know pain, the man, Pain, declared. He raised his hands. Almighty push. The village began to flatten under an invisible, gravitational weight. But before the shockwave could reach the heart of the village, a streak of violet light cut through the air. The devil's intervention. Naruto stood in the center of the crater, his hand raised. A massive, spectral shield of azure energy had deflected the gravity well. He didn't look strained, he looked bored. Pain, is it? Naruto asked, looking up at the god of the Akatsuki. I've spent the last 3 years sparring with Virgil. Your gravity feels like a light breeze. Pain descended, his eyes fixed on Naruto. You You are the Jinchuriki. But you are more. I see the shadows of ancient kings behind you. You see a family that doesn't like it when people touch their stuff, Naruto replied. He didn't waste time. Naruto closed his eyes for a heartbeat, and the world slowed to a crawl. He didn't just activate his devil trigger, he achieved the form Dante and Virgil had spent a lifetime perfecting. Sin Devil Trigger. Naruto was transformed into a towering draconic knight of silver and shadow. 4 wings of pure energy erupted from his back, and a blade of pure light manifested in his hand. He moved with a speed that bypassed the concept of distance. The battle wasn't a fight, it was an exorcism. Naruto tore through the 6 paths of pain as if they were made of paper. He countered the universal pull by anchoring himself in the fabric of reality and silenced the summoning path with a single roar that sent the giant beasts fleeing back to their realms. The new dawn. Hours later, the battle was over. The village was scarred, but alive. Naruto stood atop the ruins of the academy, his transformation faded, looking out at the sunset. Dante and Virgil stood on a nearby rooftop, watching their protege. He did it, Dante said, tossing a coin. He's stronger than both of us were at his age. He is a Sparta, Virgil replied, his voice filled with a rare, undeniable pride. He has found the strength to protect without losing the will to fight. He is the balance the world needed. Naruto felt their gaze and offered a small, knowing smirk. He looked at the villagers, Sakura, Hinata, and even the old Hokage, who were looking at him not with fear, but with reverence. He was no longer the demon brat. He was the vanguard of the leaf. The Akatsuki was broken, Sasuke was still out there somewhere in the shadows, and new devils would surely rise. But as Naruto gripped the hilt of his sword and looked toward the horizon, he knew one thing for certain. He was Naruto Uzumaki Sparta. And the gates of hell would never move him.